Bolivian president, or I should say ex-president, Evo Morales, who, by the way, is the first indigenous president of the country and a leftist leader, resigned. So now he resigned after being pressured by the Bolivian military following some allegedly disputed elections. Okay, so, and I say resign, but in reality, if you're pushed out by the military, then it's considered a coup. So, now, let me give you the details on why that's kind of why that's basically a sham. On October 20th, Morales had won re-election by more than 600,000 votes. It's about 10% margin. Um, and so he went up against his opposition, the opposition candidate, Carlos Mesa, right, in the first round of elections. Okay, so he won. He won the election. Immediately, the OAS, immediately corporate media says, oh, no, that sham election, sham election. So Morales said, okay, look, I see your concerns. So let's do another election. Not good enough. And of course, the military ended up forcing him out. So again, their whole argument is that there was irregularities in the election, right? However, according to experts who did statistical analysis of Bolivia's publicly available voting data, found no evidence of irregularities or fraud. No voter fraud, no election fraud. And and of course, there are those who did go into detail about the methods used to count the votes, and found that the results were actually incredibly accurate. And Morales had won the election. Now, there was one issue that was also brought up, and that's Morales and term limits, right? So now Morales was running for a fourth term, and earlier, I think it was 2016, he actually went up against the courts to abolish term limits, right? So saying that, look, I believe that these are unconstitutional. Now, the Bolivian version of the Supreme Court said those term limits were also unconstitutional. So, look, he won. He won the election. He should be president today. Now, we might not like it, but technically, he won fair and square. But okay, nonetheless, the military pushed him out. And by the way, these are right-wing paramilitary groups also helped push him out. According to Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone, you had these right-wing opposition gangs that actually went and physically attacked elected politicians from the leftist MAS party. They even ransacked the home of Morales himself while burning down houses of several other top socialist officials. So there is definite violence there. And not only that, but you also have a video floating around. I decided not to show that because it's too graphic. But there was a female socialist mayor that was publicly tortured on video. So that's disastrous. So now one of the major figures in the opposition was a man named Luis Fernando Camacho. Now, it's not the Camacho from Idiocracy, right? No, this is a guy who's incredibly dangerous. He is a Christian fundamentalist, multi-millionaire. So his family was involved in Bolivian gas. And so before Morales and the left-wing parties took over, they were very much the peak of Bolivian society. This one family, they had a lot of money, again, because they were connected to gas. Now, that family actually lost out on multiple millions of dollars after Morales nationalized the gas industry. So let's be honest about that, right? So this guy obviously had a chip on his shoulder, and so was actually working with and consulting with Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, and also Juan Guaido, who was opposition in Venezuela, right? That tried to do a coup there. All of them backed by the United States and the Trump administration specifically. But the United States, of course, even under Democratic presidents, has had a history of trying to overthrow leftist leaders in South America. Now, it turns out that the reason that the United States, or one of them, hate leftist leaders in South America is because of the kinds of reforms they do. They actually do crack down and try to eliminate poverty. But most, I guess, most importantly, at least in the eyes of the United States and the corporations that own our government, is that these one of the things that these countries actually do is they tend to nationalize their natural resources and make it so that these multinational corporations can actually go in and exploit those resources. Now, as far as reforms that Morales did, before Morales, they were run essentially by right-wing neoliberal or neoliberals, basically. And so what they did is they had a lot of privatization. They had a so-called free market, and it turns out there was a lot of people that were in poverty due to that system. Now, while in office, the Movement Towards Socialism Party, that's the MAS party, right, actually reduced poverty by about 42% and extreme poverty by about 60%. They also increased the GDP of the entire country. So now the United States and the CIA, the corporations, they look at that and they say, we no like you. I don't like that. No, because we have this narrative that any kind of socialism, whether it be universal health care, like Medicare for all, doesn't work, leads to eating rats. Well, so we must continue that. And we must crush every single leftist leader in South America, especially if they have the audacity to cut off our multinational corporations from their natural resources. Can't have that. Can't have that at all. So now, Evo also being indigenous, very important to Bolivia as well. He was actually the first to represent the indigenous majority of the country. Before Evo Morales, basically all the presidents of, I think going back at least 120 years, were descendants of white Europeans and generally were, again, right-wing, neoliberal, in favor of mass privatization, which appears to be what the new Bolivian government might end up doing. Just like what happened in Brazil. By the way, the Amazon still burning under Jair Bolsonaro. So, look, that's what these right-wing governments do. They basically open up the country for exploitation by multinational corporations and end up making themselves very, very, very rich in the process, while endangering, obviously, the local community, especially the indigenous community, like we've seen in Brazil, and now the indigenous community, which is the majority of the country of Bolivia right now. So, unfortunately, that's what we're going to see, right? So now, what's interesting about this, right? And the whole thing is very interesting / disastrous, but the timing is probably the most interesting for this, right? So obviously there was an election back in October, right? Well, the timing of this coup so soon after that election is interesting because what they wanted to do, I think, is to use that election as a springboard in order to overthrow basically the left-wing government. Now, along with that timing is also what Morales planned to do later on in his fourth term, right? So now let me give you an example of that. Now, this coup happened just after Morales signaled that he wanted to cancel an agreement with a German company that would develop lithium deposits. Now, lithium is used to create batteries for electric cars, electric vehicles, right? So lithium is a very important resource. In fact, lithium is expected to be highly in demand within the next few years. So, and look, as somebody who, likes to push alternative energy, and I appreciate the fact that we're going to electric cars. I want an electric car. At the same time, we also have to look at, look, here we're having a situation where now an entire country will be exploited so that we can all have cheaper electric cars. But hey, at least we're saving the environment, right? So it's like now there's an evil involved in trying to make ourselves a little bit more, or I should say, a little less dependent on fossil fuels. But it involves exploiting another country. So that's what we have. Okay. So now, the Morales move, let me give you more details on that. On November 4th, to cancel the December 2018 agreement with Germany's ACI Systems Alemania came after weeks of protests from the residents of the Potosi area. Now, that particular area of Bolivia has about 50 to 70% of the world's lithium reserves. This is in an area called the Salar de Uyuni Salt Flats. Okay. So now, among other clients, the ACISA provides batteries to Tesla. Now, look, if you want to see what the result of this is, just go look at Tesla stock. Huge increase. And again, I'm conflicted because I actually do like what Tesla does as far as engineering cars. I have friends that work at Tesla. And so, look, I'm conflicted, but you look, right? They need lithium. And so now we have this expectation that the lithium reserves will be exploited by these corporations. And so other corporations that rely on that, their stocks are going to go up. And like I said, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. So now, more. According to Bloomberg News, demand for lithium is expected to more than double by the year 2025. So, and right now, lithium is mainly mined in Australia, Chile, and Argentina. But Bolivia has about 9 million tons. And to really give you an idea of how much that is relative to the rest of the world, Bolivia, and why there's such an interest in these lithium mines, they have the second largest amount of unmined lithium in the world. Yikes. So now what Morales wanted to do is pull out of that deal and either renegotiate or even nationalize the lithium mines. And so they can't have that happen. Now, let me give you more details on that. Back in June, Telesur reported that Morales' government was determined to industrialize Bolivia and has invested huge amounts to ensure that lithium is processed within the country to export it only in value-added form, such as in batteries. So nationalize the lithium deposits, manufacture the batteries on their own, and then sell them to other companies, including Tesla. That, of course, will cost Tesla money, or these other companies that are also interested in this battery technology. And so they're like, no, cut out the middleman. We just want the lithium. Look, a disastrous situation, right? So now, of course, and not only that, but let me go back to that for a second. So if you do the manufacturing in Bolivia, well, that means jobs for Bolivians, right? And a better standard of living, higher wages, etc., right? Well, now, not going to happen. It would have actually lifted more Bolivians, if it went properly, more Bolivians out of poverty, and increased the GDP of the country, and would have helped, like I said, everyone in that country, except for, of course, the multimillionaires. So now, not going to happen, right? What it looks like now is that you're going to have more multinational corporations that are going to have a go at mining the country's lithium and extracting the profit, not for the Bolivian people, but for essentially themselves. Anyone who doesn't see that there's a profit motive behind the coup, look, you don't want to see it at this point. And look, a lot of people are also seeing the handiwork of the CIA involved. I mean, after all, it's not like they don't have a track record of overthrowing leftist governments in South America for the benefit of large multinational corporations. I mean, look, the term banana republic? That literally comes from a time when the U.S. instituted a coup in order to get access to cheap bananas. It's not like it hasn't happened before. Look, if we do it for something as simple as bananas, which is bananas, I know, wrong time. why wouldn't we do it for something that is expected to have in the next few years incredible demand, as we see with the market for lithium? As usual, this seems to come down to money, to profit, and, for the US, basically, the US government, corrupt as it is, paving the way for multinational corporations that buy our politicians and essentially have captured our government to exploit another South American country and their resources for their own gain. That's the situation, man. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.